The world leaders taking the stage at this week's United Nations General Assembly are warning about sea level rise and the impacts of climate change in the most dire and personal terms. In a special high-level summit to address the impacts of rising seas, small island nations pleaded for their survival and insisted on their sovereignty despite overflowing oceans. More in the next report.
Climate change is dramatically reshaping life in Pacific Island nations, leaving them ever more vulnerable to storm surges, salt water contamination, ruined crops and relentless coastal erosion.
It's an emotional one, and it's not a fair situation from our end that we are facing the brutal impacts of this crisis that we contribute very little to. And what's endangered is our identity to our land, our identity as Tuvaluans, and the future of our children and our descendants. And that's very concerning.
The freshwater lenses beneath Tuvalu's atolls, once tapped through wells, were contaminated by rising seas years ago, leaving the nation's 11,000 residents reliant on rainwater. Even their crops now grow in boxes rather than in the salt-poisoned ground. This past February, storm waters surged from the lagoon on Tuvalu's main island Funafuti, flooding roads and seeping into homes.
Sea level rise is a global and a multi-dimensional phenomenon that requires global action and prompt response. No nation, no community can address it alone. For small island developing countries, sea level rise poses an existential threat to our economies, to our culture and heritage, and to the land that nourished our ancestors for centuries. The existential threat we face is not of our making, but it will remake us.
Since the start of the 20th century, global mean sea levels have risen faster than at any time in the last 3,000 years. Experts say it is a direct result of land ice melt and seawater expansion from planetary heating. According to NASA's latest projections, Pacific Island nations will experience at least 15 centimeters of sea level rise in the next 30 years. Even king tides, which are extra high tides caused by new or full moons, now cause mayhem in the Marshall Islands, flooding schools and blocking access to the airport. Tuvalu's situation might be even more precarious. By 2050, more than half of the capital's land area will be regularly flooded, and alarmingly, according to official estimates, this is a figure set to rise to 95% by the year 2100. Prime Minister of Tuvalu, Feleti Teo, is helping lead diplomatic efforts to preserve the sovereignty of low-lying island nations even as they risk being submerged. Having secured an exit path for its population, Tuvalu's diplomats, along with several diplomats from Pacific Islands, are fighting for legal certainty about what happens when a low-lying island state is swallowed by the sea.